There we go. And of course, the minute I did that, my phone starts ringing.
No, that's my IM.
Oh, okay. All right, I guess we can start.
Push button.
I already did. I already pressed it. So I'm assuming everyone's here for the free PBX stuff. I'm Wayne Wenton. I work for CTA. I work for MASD, and I'm part of CTA. Jamie McParlin. He is. Well, I don't even know what your title is.
Technology supervisor for the Newburgh School District. And Wayne's guinea pig.
Yeah, and my guinea pig. He got the speaker title. He was supposed to present. So I'm going to start with I'm not a public speaker. If my ninth grade English teacher could see me now, he'd probably still give me a D. So, as I stumble through this, be patient. If you have questions, ask. I guarantee I don't have an hour and 15 minutes worth of material to get through, but I do want questions. I consider myself to be fairly proficient with free PBX and Asterisk. You can kind of ask I think that's wrong, about 16 phone systems that we currently are either in control of or secondary support for. Jamie does his own stuff and only calls me when he really gets stuck, which is nice. I like that. So how many here are looking to move towards the Asterisks and free PBX or anything like that? How many are currently stuck like with a Cisco product and enjoy paying those fees? I'll just start with the system moving from one to another. Well, I probably got a slide in here somewhere for it. So
how many people have like an old phone system that don't have a VoIP system yet?
yeah, that's where he started. So that's kind of why I brought him in, is because we took his old key system and moved it to Asterisk over probably 3 days.
It was really good.
It took about 6 months to get there and get everything configured and ready to do, but after it took about maybe 3 days to get it. It took probably about 15 minutes to get it up and running, but 3 days to get it running nicely to where the secretaries weren't complaining all the time. So, what is Asterisk? It's been around. It's open source. It's free. As in the beer last night. Been around 15 years. It's like super highly configurable. It's all based on config files. Free PBX not so much, but Asterisk proper is based on config files. There's no database stuff in there unless you want it to be there. And I highly recommend that you don't go that route. It's kind of a weird thing to deal with. Large community support, industry standard hardware, just a simple box with some cards in it. If you're using PRIs or POTS lines, you just stick a card in it. The card is probably, if you're doing PRI, the card is probably the most expensive part. Those are generally between $1,200 and $1,800 for a 4-line PRI system. The box can be a simple Dell box. What did we put in it?
Super Micro, baby.
Oh, okay, well, or a Super Micro. Well, let me move on to my next one because I'm going to get ahead of myself. Free PBX is a GUI front end on it, and I'll show that after I get done with all the slides here and we get into some of the other stuff. As a MySQL back end, most of that is just to put the configurations into, so you input it into the front end, it dumps it into MySQL, and then writes the config files based on what's in the MySQL stuff. And then it provides configuration authentication for all the options. So you can hand off stuff like, extension name changes. So, half your teachers get married this summer. It's just a pain in the ass to go through and change all those. You can hand that off to your tech support, to your bottom line tech support, and that's the only thing that they can do. They don't get into the other stuff that can destroy the system because they don't even see it. It doesn't show up.
Yeah, we have our district secretary who's able to go in and just update names in the system and just totally fix it up on play, which is super great.
There is expansion for it. Sangoma is the current, I don't even know what to call them, maintainer of FreePBX. Because it is an open source, FreePBX itself is open source, but Sangoma sells modular additions to it. They cost not much money. I mean, like the endpoint manager they sell is $75 for a 25-year license. It's not a lot of money. I think the most expensive thing is Fax Pro at $175 or something like that, and for a 25-year license. So they really want you to buy their services is what they want. And here we go. Like I say, I got ahead of myself. On your server hardware, the biggest deal is fast disk. You really want your 10K SAS drives in there because that's getting the voicemail out of the memory and onto the disk as fast as it can. Because if you have a really busy system and a lot of voicemail going on, you want that out of your memory and onto the disk because you don't want a lot of I/O tying up your system and slowing everything down. Moderate amount of RAM, 16 gig is usually overkill, I would say, for most systems, unless you're running a huge operation. Well, actually, you're pretty close to the.
We have about,
And excuse me, I have a cough
we have like 600
problem. So
phones, and I think we're running in 8 gigs of RAM. So yeah, it's really nothing. And also, depending on your phone outbound setup, you could actually install this on a virtual machine as well. So I own a small business with my wife, and we have SIP. We're outbound calls, so not an actual analog connection. We just run it on and it works great.
Yep.
At the district office, though, we have T1s that go out, so we have the interface card. So I don't know if it could be a VM with the PCI card.
you guys are doing it. I know you guys are doing a VM with.
PCI pass-through right to the VM.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, you can run it as a VM. It runs great as a VM. Again, you want to give it a lot of I/O though, especially if you're doing a lot of voicemail traffic on it.
Is it encoding the voicemail, or is it just WAV file?
It's dumping them. Actually, depending on how you set it up, it'll dump it into 3 different formats. So there's a capital WAV, which I think is the Microsoft proprietary WAV format, a lowercase WAV, and then it'll throw a GSM in there just for grins. And when it actually reads it back to them, it reads it back as an SLIN file, which is, I don't know. Don't ask me, I didn't write the code, so I haven't looked at the code either, so. Let's see. Yeah, and I'll apologize a little bit here. I've had a cough for like a month, and it's just kind of a dry throat thing, so if I start coughing and roll over and die, Jamie will take over.
Oh,
So.
man.
I may have missed it there at the very beginning, but the question is, I have a system that may end up, let's say with 2,500 phones. Can this scale to that?
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
yes. They've got systems. You might want to look into their high availability modules for it. So you can run. I think you guys bought that too. Or you're looking at it. Yeah, so you can actually have 2 systems running. They're doing a PRI, what is it, a PRI switch. which is something I haven't played with, so I'm gonna go over and rack their brains a little bit with that. So you can plug your PRI into that switch, and these two boxes will talk to it. And if one falls off, it'll just switch all the PRI traffic to the other one.
We do like a warm failover in Newburgh, so I'm not a big fan of automated failover. It seems like whenever you set that stuff up, that's when it blows up.
It will fail.
Automated failover. So we have a identical box right below, and every night the configs and the voicemails and all that stuff are synchronized to the bottom box. So if the main server were to have a problem, I literally just into the second box, change the host name, and we're up and running. And we've had to do that once.
Yeah, we still have to restore the files, but yeah.
I thought we were moving the files over there.
They're moving over there, but you still gotta pull the backup into the system to dump all the comps back out. So along that line, the backup system is fantastic. You can actually push it over to another server if you set up your SSH keys, or you can just dump it on the box. What we're doing is, I think we're actually syncing the voicemail over there every hour. It might be less than that. So all the voicemail gets pushed to the secondary box almost constantly, because that's usually the one that takes the most amount of time. The backups, depending on how much config data you have in your phone configurations, they'll range from like 10 megs to a couple hundred megs. So we sync those over at on I think the only problem with the config that we have on his box is that there's nothing pruning the ancient backups on the other box. So we ran out of disk space a couple times. So if you're good with scripting, you can probably solve that problem yourself and just start pruning backups that are older than 5 days or something like that.
One of the things I really like about this system is it's Linux. On hardware, I know it's not a black box that's powered into, plugged in the network in my rack, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on here. I mean, it's Linux. I can use rsync, I can SSH. It's all the commands I'm familiar with, and
Yeah,
yeah,
you just go in, if you're a Linux whiz, you just go in and just run it like you'd run any other Linux box.
server or whatever.
FreePBX, the distro version, is actually a SchmoozeCom's owned, which is owned by Sangoma, own proprietary version of CentOS. So it's it runs just the same. You go do yum updates on it, all the stuff you'd normally do on a Linux box to keep it up. But I'm probably getting ahead of myself. So the phone hardware, it's all SIP based. I have heard people say that you could run the Cisco proprietary protocol on it if you really wanted to. You kind of run into some sort of weird licensing issues doing that. You will get no support from anybody other than the news groups on it, and most of them will look at you and say, "Oh, don't do it. It's not worth it." Convert your Cisco phones to SIP and move on. Many manufacturers, there's Polycom, Yealink, Digium actually does some phones. Sangoma actually just started putting out their own line of phones. If you use their phones, the commercial endpoint manager, which controls all your configurations for the phones, and it's actually zero touch now, isn't it? So you set up your extension, you throw the MAC address in there, you plug the phone in, and the phone just configures itself. So they're doing it, and you can go out and look for SIP phones, and there's a million different ones out there, all priced between $89 and $400, depending on how much capability you want. You get a secretary who needs, a console this big so that she can just one button push to transfer calls. Those cost a little more money than a teacher phone where you can get away with just $90.
So for us, I think we paid like $70 a phone for the Polycom phones because we bought a bunch.
A bunch.
They sent us a list of MAC addresses before they actually arrived, and so I said, okay, this extension's going with this MAC address, and what we did, you know, because we have summer school and all that stuff going on during the summer, so we wanted to make this roll out as fast as possible. When the phone showed up, we found the MAC address. You know, one guy called it the MAC address. We said, okay, this is the extension on it. We stuck a sticky on it. Wayne did the stuff on the back end, and so when we went into the classrooms, you know, I knew which classroom had which extension. 4750 goes in this room. I grabbed the phone with 4750 on it, plug in the PoE, it starts to boot. We walk out, and it's provisions itself. It's got the extension on it and everything, and yeah, 3 guys. We did it in just like a few days through 9 sites. So.
How many
600
sets was
phones.
that?
Sorry?
How many sets did you set?
About 600 phones. Yeah. Yeah, we thought it was going to be a nightmare, and it was super easy. So.
The one time the door won't close by itself. Some of the other usages that we've implemented, you know, paging systems. You can buy SIP compatible speakers, just jam them up in the ceiling. They act just like a regular phone. They're just an extension. You use the paging system inside of FreePBX to do everything with it. Just start dragging the speakers over into the group that you want them to be in, set up an extension for it, tell your secretary what that extension is so that if she needs to page, you know, the A wing or whatever, then she dials that extension, and all those speakers and all those phones, if you want them to, light up with the paging, and you know the announcement goes out. The bell system, Jamie's kind of looking at that right now because there's not a real good implementation for a bell system there, except for I think there's one. Is it software?
Yeah, Bell Commander.
Bell Commander, yeah. They seem to have something that actually will work. You put it in with the speakers, or you could probably even use the phones if you wanted to do it that way. Problem with using the phones is teachers tend to turn the volume down on those, and you don't have any control on how to reset that volume. And if you crank the volume all the way up, when the first time you page it, it's actually going to reset the volume to the midpoint, because there's a law that basically says that anytime you address that system, you must address it in a way that won't blow somebody's eardrum out.
Actually, in the new distro, there's a config setting to, I forget what it's called, but it's like set the phone volume to always be
Persistent.
Yeah, persistent. Thank you.
Yeah, and on some of the phones you can get away with that too. Polycom has a persistent volume for the handset, the speaker, and the headset. So you can set because I know this because we had a big problem in Vernonia where we had one secretary that, you know, ended up taking all the calls. They put her on the front line. She wasn't really happy about that, as you can imagine. And every time her headset would come in with a low volume, so she's reaching up, going like this to turn the volume up every call. And so I had a lot of grief about that for a while. And so we found the persistence for the Polycom stuff. And if anybody sets up Polycom phones, I'm, you know, probably about as good as that as I am with FreePBX. So, you know, just send me an email. And I'll walk you through it. Faxing. You know, there's a question mark on faxing. SIP is never a good solution for faxing. I actually have a whole slide on that. So I'll hit the button, which I think is the next slide. Nope. Okay. So moving from other systems. As of the latest version of FreePBX, there is a new bulk import feature that basically covers everything. So you can bulk import your extensions, you know, so you can export them out of Call Manager. I think we've tried to do that once, and it's Call Manager doesn't give you a lot of good detail to work with. And then you just, what I generally do is I'll just fire up LibreOffice or something like that, bring all that stuff in, and then the concatenate statement is my you know, my friend. because some of the strings are, this long, and so you just kind of start mashing them all together, export it out as a CSV, and import it right into FreePBX. All your extensions are in there at that point. If you have the MAC addresses of your phones that you want to assign to them, that's in there. You go over to the endpoint manager part of it, you press a couple of buttons, it dumps all your configs for the phones out onto the system, and you do what Jamie did. You just plug the phone in and it configures itself. I haven't gotten too deep into the latest version because we've only got 2 of them, I think, out there right now, and one of them's mine, where I don't even have any extensions on it. It's just our dial tone server. So, yeah.
Not to jump ahead, but does it integrate with AD?
No.
Does it integrate with Google Contacts?
No. Well, it might. It might. But you could, like I say, with this, you can pretty much script anything. So if you can figure out how to script it and and push it in as a CSV, you can do that.
So same for Exchange?
Exchange, what is that stuff that you're using?
We've got a SIP trunk to the voicemail server.
Right.
So we've got it separate. But once we switch to Asterisk, it's really going to be a question like, do we even want to keep that? The only reason we're keeping it at the moment is because has semi-decent voice to text. But I mean, it's such a minor thing. I don't know.
With Exchange, what are you looking for?
Well, I'm just asking for compatibility.
Well, with the voicemail system, it will send emails out, so you can push that out through your Exchange, and it can attach the WAV file to it if you want. When I get asked to do that, I throw a lot of caution out there because we had an HR employee that wanted the WAV files on it, and my caution to her was, if you're going to do this, do not take your laptop to Starbucks and sit there and start listening to your voicemail. Yeah.
I was going to say, to answer Lenny's question, we actually have our Asterisk system set to pull our global directory out of our Active Directory.
Oh, okay.
On our phones, you can do a lookup if we want in our organization right on the phone, and it pulls the information out of
Right.
TV or that.
Yeah, and I something like that I actually found recently, because I mainly live with Polycom phones. There's not a lot you can do except for the initial load on Polycom.
That's right. It does depend on the functionality of the phone.
Yeah.
Not all phones have the same features.
Yeah, and I'll show you the site that Jamie turned me on to. He's got a script that actually will pull all that and create your directory list for you.
This is a native feature of Asterisk, or do you guys have to load a module or do some custom?
I can't remember. It sounds like
It's in the user manager under the event settings.
yeah, it's like what it is it's like a PHP page that you get, and it generates an XML file, and that's fine. The phone parses that out with the directory.
Right. And
You have to supply a couple of parameters, otherwise it's not going to do anything. And those are usually your search parameters.
yeah, and it's just it's delving into the database and pulling data out of that. So if you're a PHP whiz, you can do pretty much anything you want, pulling data out of that database.
I was going to follow up on the Exchange thing. If you do want to try that, I'm trying to remember if I have 2 SIP tunnels because Exchange switches ports.
Yes.
We ran into this weird issue, like it would lose connectivity. We're like, what's going on? What is it, like 5061 and 50?
5060 and 5061 is the one. It just sort of switches between them
I don't, and you,
at
well,
no interval whatsoever,
and
just
you
kind
have
of
to-
randomly.
Yeah, you have to set it as an endpoint or a media termination point or something. There's some caveats. It's doable. I mean, it works.
At this point, I'm actually more interested in Google Contacts, because we have more information in Google Contacts than we have in AD, and we don't have Exchange.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We're pretty much Google.
Yeah, if you can pull that data out, there's always ways to get it onto the phones. It's more of a function of the phones than it is of the of FreePBX or Asterisk.
No, I was gonna say, Google does have a API for it. A lot of that information on it. It's probably whip up something similar.
Build your own.
Yeah, yeah. This is definitely you need to hack around on it to customize it for yourself. There's a lot of cool tools, a lot of people doing really weird stuff with this, and I'll demonstrate one of them here at the end.
So if I could take a sidebar really quick. The phone system that we looked at before this was gonna cost us $300 grand. This ended up costing us like 65 grand, and that's with Wayne's fees
Yeah,
in there
what,
as well.
25K of me,
And
I think.
100 phones too many. So if anybody needs any extra Polycom phones. A lot of, let me ask you this, who's done a FaceTime phone call today? Okay, 2 people. Remember when we were kids and the future was video calling and it was like, oh my God, this is gonna be the coolest thing ever? Does everybody remember that? Think of that? Now we have it, nobody uses it. Like, nobody wants it. With these other phone systems, I hear a lot of districts like, oh, we need this crazy thing with Exchange for our secretaries. And it's like, this is like 1% of your users. And those people don't even know these features exist. So if you don't bother to give it to them in the first place, they ain't never gonna miss it. And we spent 70 grand on it. There's no yearly maintenance fee, maintenance contracts or anything like that. And there's all these features that no one would use that we're just not missing. And so,
There are a lot of features in
yeah,
it.
it made a lot more sense for us.
Can I ask you a question though on
Yeah.
that? There is a feature set, we're moving from an old PBX to something like this.
Yeah.
And there's a feature set that my administration really wants, and that's a handoff to a app on a cell phone. Because my administrators don't wanna be taking phone calls on their cell phone if they're calling out where their caller ID is gonna show up with a personal. They'll actually come back to the office. You know, to where I'm going at? So superintendent's out in the field, right, has to deal with an issue that he wants to make sure that caller ID didn't come from his personal cell phone,
I see.
right?
So how is that working right now? Does he call in?
With other systems, what I'm saying when you were talking about larger feature
Right,
sets,
right, right.
with other systems that have that handoff to an app that's on their phone,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a SIP
Yeah,
rate.
there, you could set up a SIP client on the phone, or you can do what they call a direct outward dial.
right?
It's usually not something that you want on, because that means anybody that's in your system, that calls into your system, if they can find that feature, can call out of your system.
Right.
So
It is possible.
it is possible. It is possible, but you set up a separate DID probably for that, that only the superintendent or, whoever needs to use this feature would know, and then they would be able to call into your system, turn around and call out of your system so that it comes from your system.
And that's not to say that Asterisk doesn't have advanced features.
Right.
I don't know if you've noticed, but my phone has been buzzing during this talk today, and it's because people are calling the help desk in Newburgh, and it rings my cell phone.
Right.
So, there are those features in there.
Right.
I just didn't want to pay an extra, $200,000 for some super,
Oh, I get it.
so.
It's where's the middle road and what
Right,
you
right,
need,
right,
and
yeah.
it's-
But this definitely has all kinds of wacky stuff
Yeah.
with it. So,
I'll get into
as we'll talk-
the console or into the front end for it and kind of go through the menu items and you can see there's so many menu items in there that it's kind of ridiculous. I didn't fire up my VM, but you'll have to suffer through that too. But let's. Are there any more questions before I start moving on?
One thing I wanted to say was, so I own this small business with my wife, and we were talking about what to do with people on hold, and we're actually going to set up a pick your own adventure on hold,
Yeah.
so you can listen, and it'll be like, press 1 to hear a joke, press 2 to, hear Jamie trying to play Led Zeppelin on guitar, You know, so, I mean, there is like a bunch of really cool, if you spend time with it, read the docs, there's a bunch of really killer features. I don't want people to think that there's not.
Pretty much
don't
anything
wanna
you
s-
want to
yeah.
do, you can actually get away with doing.
What I'm hearing you're saying is, in reality, a lot of those feature sets.
Yeah, you'll bang your head to set up this one feature and then find out nobody wants it. Just like with FaceTime. Like, I mean, it's awesome to do that stuff with my grandma on Thanksgiving, but for the most part, I don't even want to talk.
It's really
We're all texting
useful if
nowadays,
we're
you know,
looking for the
so-
PRI at his place.
What were you gonna say?
One of the features that we have set up on my phone is, this is now inbound. I didn't want to give vendors my cell number, but I might need to talk to them. I move offices a lot.
Yeah.
So when they hit my voicemail, if they dial 0, it'll actually ring through to my cell phone.
Oh,
And
nice.
that's come in really handy when troubleshooting problems because I'm never in the same place.
And the other thing that we set up for her is that she gets paid out of Northwest Regional, but her desk is at MESD. So she has a phone there, she has a phone at MESD, so when somebody calls that phone there, we actually tie the two systems together and it rings on both phones. And we do that with all of our districts, or all of our ESDs that we work with at CTA.
What was, just out of curiosity, the other solution we were looking at would be astronomical, right? What was that?
That was the lowest.
Oh, I don't know.
It was, it started with an S.
Short.
Shortel,
Thank you.
yeah.
Shortel. And that was bananas cheaper than everything else we looked at.
Wasn't Cisco up around $1 million or something like that?
I don't know. So was, you know, and at the
Yeah.
time, we were moving from a phone system from the 90s where we were buying OS2 warp compatible stuff off of eBay to keep the phone system. It was bad news. So, yeah.
And we actually exported his configs once they figured out how to get them out of there, and we're able to convert them and just bring them right into FreePBX, and you know, you've heard his story about just plugging phones in and they worked. All right, so let's see. I already said there's CSV imports for everything. Some of the tips if you're coming from a different system, especially a key system, you know, train your secretaries. Train your secretaries. You know, I can't emphasize that enough. They are the ones that are going to complain the most.
How does 911 handle that?
The way we handle it, I mean, there's multiple ways of handling it. Your provider needs to honor the ANI. And so what we do is, since most of our districts, well, I think all of the districts that we deal with on this, their IP addressing scheme is always, you know, segmented by school. We go through and we parse the IP address of where the phone came from, and then set the ANI and then dial out. And it's in here. It's in my slide because that is one of the features that, you know, that I get constantly, and it's actually one of the pains in my neck, because, you know, 911, no one wants that to fail, and every time it does, I gotta tell Eric about it. So, if you're coming from a non-VoIP system, reinforce to them that it's just a phone. The first system that I installed was in Vernonia. You know, my first experience installing, you know, a VoIP system was in Vernonia. I had been with the company for probably 5 months, and they dumped it on me. And they were coming from an old key system. They were coming from 3 different locations and consolidating into one. We moved them into, you know, from that old key system into a VoIP system. The secretaries wigged out because they're used to, you know, pick up line 3. You know, I need to dial out, so I got to punch a line number and dial out. The teachers were like, "Oh my God, we get phones? You know, we get a phone on our desk? That's awesome. How do I use it?" And, you know, the thing that I just ended up saying was, it's a phone. It's treat it like your home phone if you have one anymore, or treat it just like your cell phone. You pick up the phone and you start punching buttons. you know, and then at the end of your punching the buttons, you will either do a timeout for it to go on, or it'll just start ringing. And we've had other ones that, you know, you have to dial 8 to get out, or 9, or, you know, or whatever that situation is. When I usually set these up, the 8 and the 9 stay, but 9 times out of 10, you'll see someone not dial the 9 or the 8, so you set up your dial plan to do that too. So you cover all your bases with the single dial plan, so that nobody is ever frustrated with their phone. Here's my faxing slide. Don't. You know, if you can afford it, pay for the POTS lines, because otherwise you're going to be running around to every fax machine, setting that thing at 9600 baud, and then eventually you're going to run across one of these HP all-in-ones where you have no control whatsoever on how to set the baud rate on it. And it's going to constantly start at 3400 baud and then try or 38.4 and try and train down. And it will fail before it gets down to a reasonable speed. And then your secretaries are going to yell at you. And then you're going to spend a lot of time trying to mess around with your ATAs and get them dialed in, and figure out how to get that thing going.
You know, the thing about faxing is, I asked our secretary, it's like being on an episode of Seinfeld. I'm like, who's sending faxes? Why are we sending faxes? Well, other schools are sending, whatever it is.
Student records.
Student records, thank you.
There are HIPAA requirements.
Yes, yes.
There are really good reasons why you need fax, because you can't guarantee encryption other ways. So
Yeah.
HIPAA requires it if you're sending medical records and other things, so.
Yeah, there are reasons for it. Yeah,
My suggestion was going to be a session next year where all the tech people from these districts sign a blood oath that we're done with faxes, then we're done with it.
If you can get there, I'd love you, but.
there are some other.
Take a look at what you have to do, you may say, well, we'll try something out here.
There.
What's that?
What's your network?
We're using Juniper stuff.
Juniper stuff? So I'm sure it does get the C38 stuff set up, and you'll.
Assuming your fax machine will actually deal with it.
Well, yeah, audio codes makes a great ATA.
Audio code?
Audio code.
Yeah,
Expensive.
I'll dispute that, but I'm not a big audio codes fan, but I work with ancient ones, so.
I use the audio codes, and I will say that faxing over SIP is not the answer. The best answer
Right.
to get out of that problem, some cheap ScanSnap scanners, and there's a number of vendors out there that do an email to fax, so you've got a centralized fax server.
You can do that straight through free PBX.
Okay.
Or the blood oath.
That is a way to get out of the
There,
faxing business.
there are probably a half a dozen ways of skinning this cat. At Northwest Regional, at MESD is where we first started it. Because it's just one building, we were able to get away with having a card in the fax or in the Asterisk server itself that provides POTS lines. And then so it simply, it picks up, it acts just like the phone company. It takes that and just switches it internally to the PRI and sends it out. Never touches SIP. And that works really, really well if you're all in one building. When you're not all in one building, you want to do something, like I said, use good ATAs and good fax machines. We're part of another thing that we have done is for inbound faxing. That is all virtual. It comes in, the free PBX system answers it. Well, actually, it doesn't answer it, but another system running on that box answers it. Hylafax, yeah. And then, it receives the fax and emails a PDF to the people. And that's actually turned into a really good solution, especially at Northwest Regional, where they have faxes that are like 120 pages. they're sending that many and they're receiving that many. And when we were trying to do it all through the ATAs at 9600 baud, you know, you're 45-minute faxing, you know, instead of a, you know, 15-minute, which is still a little bit outrageous, but, and we're having collisions all the time where, you know, there's busy signals constantly on the people trying to fax to them. And of course, the first thing they do is they call up and say, your fax is broken. It's like, no, it isn't broken, it's just busy. And so I got lots and lots of calls and spent lots and lots of time troubleshooting all this. And then found out that every time the RICO came out to fix a fax problem, their first solution is to replace the fax board. Well, when you replace the fax board, it resets all the settings. And of course, the guy who come out and replaced the fax board is the low-level tech who has no idea how to set that fax board back up and train the baud rate down, turn off the error correction, all that stuff that you have to do when you're faxing over SIP. And I say 9600 baud, I've seen 14.4. On the inbound, we can do 14.4 pretty reliably right now. But outbound, 9600 baud is about as good as it gets. And you've got to have a good fax machine if you're doing it. You can't just go down to Office Depot and buy an HP and expect that to work. It won't. And here we go. I got about 3 slides on this, actually. So 911, you know, that's a big hot button for me. There's 2 common ways. You either set up ATAs and POTS lines, so you know you have a nice solid connection out, and that POTS line is registered with the PS Alley, and you get all that good stuff, you know, and never have to worry about it, except for when the ATA decides to reboot spontaneously and not connect back up. And then, so you spend a lot of time watching your ATAs and making sure they're up. Or you modify the ANI and push it out through your PRI. That's our preferred method on a lot of these. Pros on the ATAs, emergency services always know where you're at. And I didn't, that was a note to me, the E-rate stuff. I'm not even sure if POTS lines are E-rateable anymore. Do you know? Yeah, yeah, okay. They're not cheap either way.
Only one 911 call at a time if you have one more.
Yes, yes. And remind me when I'm done with these to talk about this thing that I've been working on since last year when Shoretail did, I think it was you guys. Did you do a thing with Shoretail? It was Beaverton? Oh, it was Beaverton then. Yeah, it was in this room, I think, too. And they talked about all this stuff about, you know, being able to conference people in on the call for a 911 and shoot emails out all over the place. And I kind of came up with a solution for that. So the 911, modify the ANI and use your PRI. It's less expensive, and there's better logging on it.
So for remote locations, though, you'd probably want to use the POTS line, right? Or a smaller office. I mean, it's well.
No, I mean, as long as I have a way to tell that is from a remote office, either by the extension or by, you know, the IP address, you can push that out through your own PRI.
Excellent.
We do it all the time at, well, hopefully not all the time, but we have it set up at all the locations where, you know, multiple schools. It's all just looking either at the extension range or the IP address of it.
So, you guys are, I kinda get the impression you have a central server, or are you deploying servers at each location?
Nope, just one at the district office.
Okay, so then, what are you doing when the network connection goes bad and you got just one POTS line out at the phone with a red phone out or something like that, or?
Well, everybody has cell phones, so.
But yeah, it
You don't
is.
deal with a radical union, do you?
I would actually recommend that myself. You know, always have a bat phone sitting out there. You know, so someone can pick it up, or you can use your fax lines if you're using bots. for your fax lines.
Well, and the other thing is I don't remember when it went into effect,
Go
but
ahead and just
you can use cellular
jump
for
in.
like your fire alarm systems now, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so, and those have to have 2 POTS lines, we're still using POTS lines, because they have a failover form.
Oh, right, yeah.
But, so it's a lot less expensive if you go cellular, so you could even have cellular data as
Right.
your backbone. And it may end up being cheaper depending on who you're going with.
So, I was gonna answer your question there. We are kind of addressing that a little at our district. What we have are these top gateways that we actually have all of our phones programmed to route the 911 calls to if the main server is not available.
Right.
You
Yeah.
have to do that with special config.
Yeah.
And you have to also lock it down in your dial plan to where not just any call can go through it, only the 911 calls.
Right.
But to address that situation where your central server goes down, you can still push 911 calls out if you have one of these gateways at your location.
And we found at Centennial, we went through and did an inventory of all our physical POTS lines in part of our conversion this summer at Asterisk. Most of our secretaries couldn't find the bat phone in their office and didn't know what it was for. They always turned to their cell phones in the emergency.
Yeah.
Communication,
Yeah.
It's kind of, yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's kind of a human nature thing, right? It's like, you know, if I get a busy signal on this, I'm just going to reach into my pocket and pull my cell phone out because that's what I've
Well, I'm
learned to
not saying
do.
that, but that, you can't dictate that.
No, you can't dictate it. No.
And that's kind of the issue. I mean, you have to, somebody comes in and audits your systems and things like that.
Right.
They're gonna tag you for that.
We have one school district, and I don't see Scott here, that we actually have, they have POTS lines there. And the way we set it up was instead of making it a bat phone, it's actually an ATA that will only dial 911. That's all it will do. So you connect up to that through the system. We look at your IP address, we route you to that device, and it just picks up the phone and dials 911.
Yeah,
And there's different phones that some of the phones we looked at have peer-to-peer features as well. So if the server goes down, you have an ATA doing that locally. You can tell that phone that ATA has a 911 accessibility still in the gateway. You can do that with we're using Planet ATAs, I think, and you can use direct with peer-to-peer SIP connections and things like that as well.
Well, yeah, it's just that it's one of the things that your old crummy system, such as it is, has set a certain level of expectation.
Right.
And if you start implementing a new system that may be better in most ways, but doesn't meet some of those old expectations, you're gonna hear about it. And I guess that's part of the selling of this that you have to do up front.
The thing is, you won't hear about it until it actually happens.
Yeah.
And then it's a big deal at that point. I mean, especially,
An expectation, that's a requirement.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
you have to do that with any phone system.
Right,
It's doable though. You
yeah.
need to do a little bit.
Like I say, there's a whole bunch of ways of skinning this cat, so it all depends on what if you got unions and, their requirements are for stuff like that. And,
Well, it's
what,
like safety issue.
yeah, that too.
Now, when you say better logging if things go wrong, what do you mean?
Well, for an example, I got an email yesterday where we had a district that had a 911 call go out, and I thought that we'd worked through all these and got the proper ANI set on it. We didn't. It's almost like we skipped a line in the spreadsheet we were working out of, and so I had the wrong ANI in my configuration file. And of course, it happened to be an ANI for someone who was in a different county. So it pushed that ANI out and connected them up to the wrong emergency services center. And so, chaos ensued. It was a simple fix. I only changed 2 numbers in it, but what I could do is I could actually look at the log and I could trace that whole call you know, complete with it going through its logic, you know, is it this number, is it this number, is it, and it was all logged in the logs. And then I saw, okay, it pushed out this ANI. I go to my spreadsheet and I go, that's the wrong ANI. And so I knew immediately what the issue was. I knew how to fix it. But if that had been a, you know, an ATA, now I'm going through the logs looking to see, did that call make it to the ATA? Once it makes it to the ATA, I don't know what happens to it. Yeah, either way, you got to make a decision on, you know, basically on how you route those calls if you're going to use either one of those methods. There are, I'm sure, some other untested methods, you know, that untested by me, obviously, but these are the two that we primarily deal with when doing with that. And this you know, it gets to, I don't know who made the point of, you know, they didn't know where that bat phone was. Chris, wasn't it? Didn't know where that bat phone was. All these schools, like the one I was just talking about, they have a bat phone. But they probably just don't know where it's at. Or it's sitting in the closet somewhere because at one time they moved a desk from here to here, you know, moved someone from here to here. Someone went, what's this? Okay, we'll wrap it up and we'll stick it in the closet.
Just wanted to share something I picked up from Tiger 12, and we haven't implemented it in Hillsborough yet, but they use their automated student calling system at the beginning of the school year to call the bat phones. And they review with the front office or the principal's office so they can get a report back, you know, who actually answered it, and they can go reach out to that site that didn't and say, fix it.
Yeah, that is a great idea.
We have a monthly protocol, and we call every month. It's just our call and make sure the phone.
Right. Yeah, and you could, even with this, you could set that up. You know, you can just have an extension you call that goes out and starts calling all the other extensions and see who answers. You could probably actually just record the call and see who answers it that way and just give them a recorded message saying this is your automated call. You know, this is your bat phone, use it for 911. Yeah, so this is where I was going to talk about this. We've done a couple of extensions to this. Jamie wanted, I tried to talk him out of it. He wanted a time-based routing so that a call comes in. So if you're giving extensions to all your teachers, you know, live extensions, you know, live DIDs, you know, you're going to have, you know, parents calling in the middle of the day and their phone's ringing on their desk while they're trying to actually teach something. So that's generally not a good idea. And with Jamie, I was trying to say, hey, just, you know, for every school, you know, the majority rules, and you either take that and push it to voicemail or you push it to your secretaries. But Jamie was obstinate, and I ended up having to write a lot more code than I wanted to. So we set up a system that, you know, you get, you know, the day of the week, you know, Monday through Friday, from these hours, and for every extension, you can say, push it to voicemail, let it ring. Well, actually, let it ring, just turn it off, or push it to the secretary. So the teacher gets to make that decision, and Jamie has to do a lot more work. It was a bad decision, wasn't it? So that's a, you know, an example of kind of what you can do with this. It was just some PHP code. I installed a table into the Freepbx, you know, MySQL database to hold all this information. He goes in. There's a web page that has all that. He can, you know, say, okay, this is related to this time, you know, and it's at this school, which dictates where the secretary rings, and then what to do with that call. You know, either send it to, if the secretary thing is blank, then you just send it to voicemail, or you send it to the secretary. The other experiment was that, and I haven't implemented this yet anywhere because I'm just like terrified of it. It worked in my little lab, but it's one of those things that because it relates to 911. So I've written some code that writes out some config files so that you can actually say, if a call goes out, you set up a meet me conference, and you ring this phone, this phone, this phone, this phone. And they all, with a minute, it just rings and then picks up the phone. So it's gonna go to speakerphone if nobody's standing there, which is kind of what terrifies me about it. And they get into that conference in a listen-only mode, and then it dials 911. So that they can hear that, and then you can check a check mark and record that call if you want. So all 911 calls can be recorded onto the system, only the system administrator has access to those, and it will ring, a dozen phones or how many phones you want, and then put them all into a conference in, listen-only mode. So they know what's going on. They know a 911 call went out, they know that when emergency services shows up at the front door, that it's down in that room down there. Like I say, haven't implemented it yet. We'll probably, I think we're gonna throw it on Gresham Barlow's this summer, just so that we can do some testing and not really route it to 911. Route it to some other extension just for grids.
One of the, that sounds way better than the thing I'm about to tell you about, but the thing I'm about to tell you about we actually have in production, which is when somebody calls 911 or leadership, like superintendent, assistant superintendent, emails saying, alert, 911 call from this school, and it says the extension it was called from and the teacher assigned that extension. So leadership staff is aware there's a problem out there and it's supposed to call 911. So
yeah, that was actually the journal of that whole config file. It does that too. So 911 alert as many the principals and the staff, the staff that needs to deal with that as you can, so that no one's caught off guard when the ambulance comes rolling up and they're going, I don't know, who made a 911 call? And
You might think of recording in that alert the call duration.
That's a good point.
Because
it fires off immediately.
Right. It
Yeah.
depends on when it's sending out. But,
Yeah.
but like what's helpful for us is like we've had a bunch of misdials, and so dispatch calls my superintendent and says, hey, what the hell? Train
Yeah.
your staff right. And it's been helpful because then I say, oh, it's like 3 seconds. Okay, it's a misdial. And then I can tell that staff person, okay, look, if you misdial, stay on the line and tell them it's a misdial. Otherwise, they have to call you back.
But that's also what the logs are good for, because you can trace that call. You can just get that call ID and then grep that log, and you can see when it started, when it ended, and it's all there. Okay, I guess.
Got a little bit of time.
Yeah, I don't know, what time is it?
Got about 14 minutes.
Oh, really? I got that far. Any questions?
So you have the time of day routing. But one of the things we have in Cisco is closed, right, after hours.
Oh, yeah.
School's out,
That's
okay.
all in
That's
there. Yeah.
basic stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty basic stuff.
Is that configurable based on what time it is, and then can you also set that, hey, there's a fast button that this secretary has manually that can enable?
Yes,
So we
yeah,
have,
somewhere in there you can, it's not a, yeah, you have to program the button, but it's a feature code, so it's, star 270 turns it on, star 271 turns it
There's
off.
some buildings, they want it automated, and some buildings they want it manual.
We have a mix, so,
where is
the call
that?
goes to voicemail from 5 PM to, 6 in the morning or whatever. But then the district secretary, I'm talking about the main number, so the district secretary. She doesn't always go to lunch at noon.
Thank you.
She may leave at 11:45 or whatever, so, although the nighttime thing is automated to turn on and off, when she goes to lunch, she hits star 221, which activates the going direct to
Come on,
voicemail.
go.
And when she comes back, she hits star 221 to shut it off, and then at 5 o'clock it shuts off automatically. So, it's a little mix.
Just while my virtual box fires up, I'll show you. This guy here has a whole bunch of YouTube videos on how to configure this stuff up, going through phone configurations and stuff like that. He's also got a whole website, and of course he wants to, to be your vendor for doing all this stuff. So he is trying to sell stuff. But this, holy moly.
Hello, this is Lenny. Yes, hi Lenny. My name's Chris. I'm calling with Crosstalk Solutions. I got a note that you were potentially interested in purchasing a phone system. I wanted to talk to you about that a little bit.
Sorry, I can barely hear you there.
Oh, I said that my name's Chris with Crosstalk Solutions, and I heard that you were interested in purchasing a phone system.
Yes.
Do I have the right person? Did you send me an email asking about phone systems?
Oh, good. Yes.
Oh, great. So, what kind of system are you looking for, and what can I do for you?
Oh, yes. Someone did say last week, someone did call last week about the same thing. Was that you?
No, this is the first time that I'm calling you. I actually have not spoken to you before, so no, I don't know who that was.
Sorry, what was your name again?
Oh, my name's Chris with Crosstalk Solutions.
Well, it's funny that you should call because my third eldest, Larissa, she was talking about this just last week, and she is very smart. I'll give her that because.
And that, my friends, is Lenny. So Lenny is a very cool application that can be used to endlessly torment telemarketers. And what I'm going to do here is show you how to set
So this is literally 16 WAV files and 4 lines in a config. And then a couple of, how to route the call inside of FreePBX. It's highly amusing. There's actually 17 WAV files. The last WAV file you can actually interchange with one that does a Rickroll on them. So, if you don't want to endlessly torture them, you can, Rickroll them at the end of it. If they last, you can see he's 2 minutes into it already. And it waits for the silence. It detects the silence and then, fires off that next WAV file. So it's just one of those things that, if you get a lot of calls from vendors, we have this actually, Northwest Regional has a vendor line that would just generally send them to a voicemail that nobody ever listened to. And of course it was filling up the system. So we put this in there just because, yeah. It was a fun thing to do.
The great thing is you can do call recording. You can do call recording with
you
Asterisk,
gotta turn.
and then listen to the conversations your vendors have.
All right.
You got your own automated YouTube channel?
Yeah.
So, Wayne, what's the largest single server extension count you have set up?
Is that what, going to be Gresham? I think he's a little over. Yeah, it's a fairly big system, and he's running virtual. He's running on a VM. But he also pushes all of his calls through us.
So we do central dial tone, so that's just like the voicemail and local routing.
And of course,
And the next hop is a shared box.
this.
We have 2 boxes, and we're running about, I don't know, it's 25,000 sets.
I didn't get an IP address, so I can't even get to this box.
While you're opening that, I have a question for you. I'm in a small district, limited capacity.
Yep.
And so when looking at Asterisk, one of the next levels was the Digium. They're more kind of packaged, ready to go, supported version. They call it, I think, SwitchBox.
Right.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on that between Asterisk, FreePBX, and the next step, SwitchBox.
Right.
Are you familiar, and what are your thoughts?
Well, for us, we have Wayne for support.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Um,
Wayne's cheap.
I can get a hold
You
of
can,
them.
you can buy,
like
Sangoma
tier two.
will sell you support, kind of like Microsoft style, right? It's an incident, and they'll work with you till you're done. Honestly, the appliances, they're cool, but I think they're overpriced. You could almost set this up if you had like an old, gateway sitting somewhere in a closet. You could pretty much set this thing up on it as long as you're willing to spend some money on discs. And, hardware-wise, it won't cost you a lot, or you can roll a server down that you're gonna retire.
Well, there's all these boxes, he's the network guy, he's not really a Linux guy. I mean, he's proficient in Windows, but it's not.
And
Also,
I can't get to this machine because it won't
don't
actually
wanna,
pass through my, why did
If I'm
pick
not
up?
mistaken, MESD sells this as a service, so they'll, right? Like,
Kinda.
like
We'll sell anything.
Yeah, you can hire them to help you with the install, and then
Right.
you just pay like a retainer every year, and then I'm able to call Wayne, and it's, so compared to calling a company with people you have no personal relationship with, like, if Wayne is a bummer in support, you can track him down next year at ACPE, and, so.
Trying to think what I can get,
Sorry.
trying to think of what I can get to.
Well, one thing we've done, we're doing a sizing,
get to my
rough
box?
sizing guide, like 30 megahertz per concurrent call. So it's pretty low, like on the CPU.
You got HDMI?
So is anybody paying the extra license?
Here. Drive.
You don't have our VPN client on here.
Oh,
do you?
that's, yeah, no.
Has anybody got a mini display port to HDMI adapter with them?
Yes. I'm kicking myself for not bringing
In the
it.
car.
Never bought any of the appliances, but we bought several of the different.
Got one if you need it, Jason.
And,
Do you have
when
one?
we're talking about JP,
What kind of adapter do you want? I've run into this
Either a
problem.
VGA or HDMI.
Oh, do I to HDMI? I've got it, two VGA.
Oh, here comes Tony.
There you go.
VGA. Oh, you got a VGA as well? Cool.
We're in the right place for that question.
Nope,
It's mini to VGA. Will that work?
should. We're gonna switch up here and let Jamie drive, and he'll kind of show you around his system a little.
Is there an internet console application available for secretaries that handle a large number of calls?
There is.
Is it made by FreePBX or third party?
Yeah, I think Sangoma actually has the, have you played with that?
Get the Sangoma one extra. There's other modules that
There
do
was
something similar.
iSymphony came.
Yeah, iSymphony is built into it now. Oh, I probably gotta change your signal source. Which is all upside down for some reason.
And the endpoint manager that the user control kind of like basic functionality for that.
There we go.
It's like you can initiate a call from there, et cetera.
There's no porn in the bookmarks, right?
Yeah.
What's my personal computer? Come on. Yeah, this is our system here. It's just a web page.
Oh, here, let me stand over here so the thing actually videotapes it. What were we looking for?
Extensions. Yeah, so these are all our users. It's pretty self-explanatory. You set their caller ID here.
Which you don't have to set. It will actually, you have a default caller ID that it will just send out.
What's your take on vanilla versus FreePBX, vanilla asterisk?
If you like config files, if you like editing config files on your Unix box, then
Does FreePBX keep up with asterisks?
it probably more pushes asterisks than keeps
Oh,
up with
really?
it. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
We're able to set call recording, so we, at the screen printing shop that I have, we record all the calls for quality assurance. At the district office, we've trained secretaries. There's a feature code they can dial on their phone to where if they pick up the phone, they get a threatening call, they can hit some buttons on the keypad. That obviously doesn't beep to the person on the other end, but it starts the the call recording. And then I'm able, then after the call, they can just hang up. I'm able to get, they'll call me and say, I had a threatening call, can you grab the file? And I'm able to get into the system and email it to our resource officer or, whoever needs it. So, pretty cool.
Just out of curiosity, because I know in the state of Oregon, you can do that with the call recording. In Washington, I think that we have to.
I think Washington's still one-party consent, so, yeah.
So if anybody wants to check Connie Rice's
I would check that
voicemail,
with
her
your legal.
password's right there. Whoops. You can email.
Now you know that.
You can email the WAV file, or is it MP3?
It depends on how you set it up.
You can have the voicemail emailed to someone. So a lot of our principals have that set up. The only downside is if they get the email with the attachment, when they come back to their handset, they're still going to have a blinking thing saying they have a voicemail that they haven't listened to.
Right.
So your option here is you can delete the voicemail once it's been emailed. So.
Is there an option or plan for any of these vendors to create that integration or that unified messaging component where the two are talking to each other? Because everybody else does that. Like, if you pay $1 million for a phone system, you get that.
Yeah.
I don't know. Well, I mean, the option is, delete the voicemail off the system when you send that, or just pick up your phone and press the voicemail button and delete all of them. One of the two.
Well, it's also, it's part of the location of it too, right? So like, Exchange, I've got zip trunk from Asterisk to Exchange.
Right.
It's the repository. So as soon as the message is read, the light shuts off. But if you're on Gmail, you're not going to have a SIP connection back to Google, so there's no communication back.
There are ways of manipulating the busy, they call it a busy light. There are ways of manipulating that and turning it on and off. I don't know if you could get the two-way feedback though from your phone.
The bigger issue I found with cell phone is if you listen to that message on your cell phone, it becomes part of your downloaded files, and when you go to play music, you hit random.
Yeah, your greatest hits, your last phone calls.
This is the MAC address of her handset here. What to do on no answer. If she's on the other line, you have a bunch of options. You can take it to ring groups, time conditions, and IVR. A bunch of options that I've never used.
Yeah, this is really useful if you have like a ring group or something. You don't want that going to voicemail. You just want the phone when the number rings, just jet it off somewhere else. And I think we're going to do that. Somebody was wanting me to do that. Oh, I kind of came up with that yesterday, I think, at another conference, where we're going to be able to ring a bunch of extensions in the case of an emergency, where you do a school evacuation. You could redirect the main number to 3 or 4 handsets, and if nobody answers that, you don't want that going to voicemail because nobody's going to listen to that. But you can play a recorded announcement at that time and say, hey, we've had an emergency. Your kid is at this location. Please wait for us to give you the all clear. And that was part of the incident command stuff that was there the other day, which was really useful.
These are all the phones, and you can see if they're bringing it online. Here's one that's offline. You can.
You can see there's a lot of them.
You can select all the phones and reboot them all at once on accident. That happened in the middle of the day once. Well, that was, they might make that boot up sound, so like.
All right, I think we're over time.
That was actually Wayne's fault, so.
I'm gonna turn this thing off because I really
Does anybody have
don't.
any more questions?
Well, I have